Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 10, Waco Mundo PT3, Counterattack. How reliable is this information, Grimjo? Ichigo asked the blue-haired Arrancar, as they were speeding through the vast sands of Waco Mundo along with the two remaining former Espada. Grimjo growled an answer and shot him a dirty look. Are you questioning my abilities, Kurosaki? Ichigo snorted in response and focused his eyes on their path. No, I'm just being cautious. What if we're being lured there on purpose? Isn't it too easy to find out about their hideout after just 2 days of searching? Something doesn't add up and I don't want to see someone get hurt because we were too hasty. Grimjo frowned a little but gave no reply to that. After Harabel informed Ichigo about Grimjo's findings, he rushed to meet them in the tea room, where they briefly discussed about their roles in this counterattack. Wasting no time, they immediately left the Las Noches, with Harabel informing her fraction about their departure. They have been running towards the location Grimjo provided for almost an hour, yet they met nobody. We have no other choice but to trust our skills. We already talked about this. The clash between us and those unknown forces would happen sooner or later and I'd prefer to do it when I'm ready. Harabel stated from his left. I know, but you do realize that the Minos forest could easily be our graveyard. Ichigo replied in a slightly concerned sigh. Quit your whining already, Kurosaki. Their hideout should be on the outer edge of the Minos forest. That's where only Jillians or maybe few Ajuchas live. I doubt we'll come across someone stronger, well, at least till we'll meet that master. Grimjo yelled at him and licked his mouth hungrily. Even if we do meet someone strong. I've been wanting to get revenge for that strike at Las Noches. He chuckled darkly and cracked his knuckles. Ichigo begrudgingly admitted that even he was in the mood for a decent fight. Those 2 days that they have been waiting for Grimjo, he began training Lillinette and while it was a nice workout it wasn't enough for him. He was getting the hang of his flame of darkness and could use it more versatile than before. But using it against an enemy was the only way of learning how to control them perfectly, without giving in to his own darkness. Easy Grimjo, don't forget that we're not here for your sadistic pleasure or revenge. We are here simply because it is inevitable. I don't prefer violence. But if they want to hurt my friends, I'll get them before it can happen. Nell said in serious voice, not even using her nickname for Grimjo, showing just how grave the situation was. TSCH. Was the only thing that the battle-hungry Arrancar said. They stopped after 5 more minutes, just before they entered the Minos forest. From now on no more talking, be prepared for anything. They may throw some sneaky attacks at us, so don't lose your concentration. Harabel warned them and waited for each of them to nod. When they did, she nodded herself and they cautiously entered the place in Waco Mundo, where the most of the screams came from. Deep in the Minos forest, tall bodies of Jillians made their way towards the group of invaders, with a menacing eyes looking at them from behind using. Surge of Ryatsu from the hidden figure forced them to obey its commands and their pace increased. These huge Jillians, that consisted of hundreds of hollows piled together, creating a single entity, had no unique identity nor they had any coherent thoughts. They managed using only their instincts. Most of the time, their instincts were telling them to devour more hollows in order to silence the voices inside their head. Right now, their instincts were screaming fear from the one behind their backs. The one with the menacing eyes and a skull-like mask gave them one more glance and grinned deviously. It was time to start the show. Weird, even if they are scared, there should have been some hollows around us, yet I can't feel anybody. Ichigo thought as they ran deeper into the forest. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed Harabel raising her hand in front of them, preventing them from going further. What is it, Harabel? Nell landed next to her with raised eyebrow. Harabel turned her head to the group and they saw her worried face. I don't know. I can't feel any presence around us, yet I'm sure I can hear some movements some distance in front of. She went silent as all of them widened their eyes after great numbers of glowing eyes pierced the darkness around them, hovering in the air. Jillians. Dozens of them. Nell stated in surprise. Damn it, how could they have surrounded us without us noticing? Harabel cursed and prepared for fight. Ichigo looked around himself and saw that the huge hollows were decreasing the distance between them and the group. Weird, only when we finally saw them I could sense them at last. Not even a moment before. Ichigo commented and took out his Zanpakuto, measuring the enemy. Doesn't matter, we can finally fight, think about it later. Grimmjow yelled and jumped in the air, landing on the nearest Jillian, kicking it to the head and sending it stumbling to others. That was apparently the signal to start the fight, as the other Jillians opened their mouths, red energy forming at the edge. Zero. Ichigo cursed under his breath and all of them had to jump and separate, otherwise they would have gotten struck by a dozens of Zero, which weren't that strong when hit by one. Nevertheless, combined force of a dozen similar Zero could hurt even them. Everyone, take your side and get rid of them. Harabel exclaimed and turned to the hollows in front of her. Right. Nell nodded and did the same, leaving Ichigo standing before quite a number of enemies. Well, let's get it over with. He muttered and charged forward. With Grimmjow. The Jillian that was sent stumbling created an open space for Grimmjow to release his barrage of destructive kicks, that managed to even tear the Jillian's masks with the sheer force of them, killing them instantly. PF, I don't even need to use my Zanpakuto for the likes of you. He smirked and reflexively, he dodged an incoming Zero from behind, rotating in mid-air and ripping another Jillian with his claws in the process. He jumped on the falling enemy, bouncing from him to the next one, throwing a drop kick on his head, making it explode from the impact, splashing his blood on Grimmjow's attire and a few droplets of blood landed on his face. He slowly licked them and hungrily grinned at the remaining Jillians, whose instincts realized the difference in strength and made them back away from him a little. No fucking chance, you all pussies are going down. He flashed to the nearest one, while charging his own Zero in right hand. He plowed it right through the hollow skull and released the Zero on the one standing in the back, killing them at the contact with his attack. His instincts screaming at him, he sidestepped another Zero, but got hit directly with the second one that was sent his way. Rest of the Jillians froze when the smoke from the explosion cleared, revealing unharmed, but slightly pissed Grimmjow. He was sending off waves of angry Ryatsu, making the tall hollow slowly turn, trying to escape his wrath. Shouldn't have done that. Grimmjow growled and jumped at the last Jillians, biting off a chunk of its head and spitting it on the one on his left, confusing the hollow with the blood. Time to end this. He landed in front of the four remaining Jillians, charging a Zero in his both hands. Sayonara, suckers. He yelled and released his attacks. With Nell. She was speeding off to the other side, graciously dodging any Zero that came into her path, leaving only light footprints on the sands of Hueco Mundo. Her face showed no longer any emotion, as she abandoned them in the moment they were surrounded. Nell was an odd hollow in her own league. Every hollow acted based on instincts of survival and being strong, most of the time it meant the instinct of the killer. Survival of the fittest. There was no place in Hueco Mundo for the weak. That was the exact reason why Nell could have been considered odd. She never enjoyed the killing, always preferring to solve her problems with negotiations, and using the violence was the last resort for her. But even she was realizing that in this moment, there was no way out of this other than fighting. It became clear to her the moment she agreed with the plan to counterattack. The only way to ensure that her companions, her friends, could ever be safe, was to show the attackers who was stronger, and thus, violence. If this was about humans or other races, there may have been other solutions, but most of the hollows responded to a bloodbath, to strength. With this in her mind, her face lost its usual soft expression, becoming neutral. She dodged another Zero and jumped high enough for her kick to reach the head of the nearest Jillian, tearing its head off, spraying the blood on the others next to it. With a fluent and swift turn, her knee found the another victim of her raw strength. Kicking from the falling body, she jumped into trajectory of the Jillian Zero. Without missing a beat, she swallowed it whole, grimacing at the horrible taste of the energy and adding her own Ryuryoku to it. Zero Doble. Her special Zero easily dispatched the row of Jillians that were unlucky and couldn't evade it. Landing softly on the sand, she quickly charged her hands with energy and sidestepped the Zero from the remaining Jillians. In a quick motion, she punched the air in front of her, releasing the energy stored in her arms. Bala! The attack blew a huge hole in the belly of her enemies, making them collapse on each other. As their bodies started to disappear, she felt waves of Grimmjow's angry Ryatsu and shook her head in exasperation. Hot-headed animal. With Harabel. The strongest of the remaining former Espada was calmly analyzing the situation she was in, all the while casually dodging or deflecting Jillian's Zero with her sword. 8, 9, no, 10 Jillians in front of me. Threat level, small, but if we are already facing off enemies, I should preserve my energy as much as I can. One Zero should dispose the most of them. Harabel was probably the most analytic member of the counterattack force, and she realized immediately that fighting like Grimmjow, with unnecessary movements and risk, would probably come around and bite her in the ass later, when they'll most likely encounter Vasto Lord. With that thought, she flashed from her previous area and landed behind her opponents, who were too slow to realize her disappearance. Therefore, they couldn't even see the attack that killed most of them. Zero. Harabel calmly said, and from the tip of her sword, a massive torrent of yellow energy emerged, tearing through the enormous bodies of the Jillians, instantly killing 3 of them. Seeing that, she slashed with her sword, making her Zero to cover larger area and catching another Jillian's with it. She raised an eyebrow when she realized that the shape of her attack was somewhat familiar to her. Oh, right, it looked like Kurosaki's Getsuga, or what is it called? Interesting. Feeling a danger, she spun around, deflecting another Zero with her sword. So one of them managed to escape my Zero. She thought in surprise as the last Jillian came into her view. With a burst of speed, she closed the distance between them, and with a quick slash, she cut him to 2 pieces. Satisfied with herself, she turned to the side, where Ichigo should have been. The sight in front of her fascinated her, as the only thing she saw was a mixture of black and red Ryuryoku erupting all over the place. Such a thick and hard Ryatsu. I'm starting to think that I'm fine leaving him to be an enigma. With Ichigo. Ichigo stood before the slowly moving Jillians, deciding on the course of his actions. With his hand on his Zanpakuto, Shirasaki's voice stopped him. No, don't use the blade. I think it's time for the review of the usage of your hollow powers. Say what? Ichigo thought in surprise. Well, I trained you in how to use your hollow powers in an efficient way, but you haven't tried it against an enemy yet. Since these fuckers are only a lowly Jillians, I think that even you could fuck their asses without Zanpakuto. Look at that blue-haired pussy, he's refusing to use his sword against someone this week, and nor should you. Ichigo let go of his Zanpakuto and shrugged. His hollow was right, again. It was becoming a habit, that his inner spirits were right more often than he was. It was pissing him off a little. Without noticing, he unconsciously raised his Ryatsu a bit, covering himself in black steam, created by his darkness element. He did it just as the Jillians finished charging their Zero and released them at him. Since Ichigo was talking to his hollow, he didn't even notice the attacks coming at him, making them strike him with full force, raising the sand around him, obstructing the Jillians from seeing him for a while. When the sand calmed down, basic instincts in Jillians started to make them back away from the weird Shinigami, in the way they did when the other ones were fighting Grimmjow. Ichigo was still in thoughts and looked like he didn't even notice being attacked. His Ryatsu, that was swirling around him in the shape of black steam, was so thick that even the combined Jillian Zero couldn't penetrate it. Ichigo was unharmed, and it looked like his train of thoughts finally stopped when he looked up at his enemies. Why are they backing off? Ichigo asked himself, confused. Inside his mind, his hollow and old man clad in black facepalmed each other. Oh well, guess I'll try my hollow powers. Ichigo said and flashed through the Jillians, stopping when he was in the center. First lesson, Zero. He focused and pushed his hollow Ryuryoku into the palm of his right hand. Noticing an incoming Zero, he straightened his back and used his left hand to deflect it. Immediately after that, his right hand shot out. Zero. Red energy that flew out toward the Jillians in front of him, but unlike the Zero of the others, it didn't stop there and continued to the roof of the Minos forest, finally stopping in an explosion. Nice for a shithead. Ichigo scoffed, as he started to translate some of his hollow's insults into compliments. Second lesson, Bala. Jumping high, so that he was on the level other Jillians had their heads, one again he pushed the hollow energy into his arms, letting it enter his palms. He spun himself while punching the air in front of him with a quick thrusts. Bala. Jillians didn't stand a chance as their heads were being blown off by the violent red energy coming at them in rapid rate. When he was certain that all of his opponents were down, Ichigo landed on the sand with the air around him full of his black Ryatsu, now mixed with his potent red hollow energy. Fuck yeah, well, we didn't get to the last lesson with high-speed regeneration, but I think I'd be insulted if a mere Jillian managed to injure you. So, good job, my Padawan. Shirasaki laughed and went silent after a moment. Yeah, I'd be insulted myself. Ichigo muttered. Looking around, he saw that his companions finished their fights too, with none of them injured. He joined them after dusting himself. With everyone. Took you long enough, Kurosaki. Grimmjow said immediately after Ichigo flashed to them. What's the matter, Grimmy, didn't get your share of blood? Ichigo replied mockingly. A single vein bulged on Grimmjow's forehead and he growled angrily. Enough, you two. Don't drop your guard yet. Since we encountered Jillians, it means we're about to face somebody stronger soon enough. Harabelle scolded them. You thought about that too, huh? Nell asked as they started to move again, towards their goal. What do you mean? Grimmjow asked in a little calmer voice. Think about it. Ever since you became an Espada, one of the strongest beings in Hueco Mundo, have you been attacked by a mere Jillian? Harabelle asked him. Grimmjow frowned and thought about it, shaking his head after a minute. Exactly. Jillians are maybe not bright, but even they can feel the difference in power. They would never attack us willingly. It was the equivalent of a suicide, no matter in what numbers they would attack us, they would end up dead. Harabelle muttered. Grimmjow's face showed enlightenment. You're saying that somebody, a lot stronger than them, somehow threatened them into attacking us. Probably the same person who made those Ajuchas attack us at Las Noches, that unknown master? Harabelle just nodded. I get the feeling that he's testing and the next enemies we'll face will be Ajuchas. Nothing we can't handle, but it'll just tire us. Nell frowned. And I get the feeling that he wants us tired. Ichigo finished darkly. Well, he can go fuck himself. This time I'm prepared and I'm not about to let some lowly Ajuchas defeat me. They were lucky last time as they surprised us. I'm the king, and I shall prove it to them. Grimmjow growled again in anger. Ichigo almost wanted to say something, but Harabelle's face stopped him with an expression that was almost saying don't even bother, so he held his tongue and together, they entered the deeper into Minos forest, not even realizing that they should have already been at the enemy camp. Soul Society, Central Great Underground Prison. So this is where it all ends? The traitor of the Soul Society, a man whose betrayal affected many, whose action cost lives of even more, a Shinigami with unclear intentions, a former captain of the 5th Division. Sosuke Aizen. His punishment being imprisonment for 20,000 years, without contact with any person, began the day of his defeat at the hands of Kurosaki Ichigo. His residence as of today? The deepest level of the Central Great Underground Prison. In other name, Mukin. The level, reserved for the greatest criminals of Soul Society, which actions were so severe, they caused unprecedented disturbance in the whole dimension. This was where Aizen Sasuke contemplated his fate. Where did I go wrong? Did I underestimate Kurosaki Ichigo? I can't believe that he could surpass the power of the Hogyoku, which is basically... I see, so that's it, huh? Under the heavy bandage he was strapped with, Aizen Sasuke wanted to laugh at his own stupidity. I was under the impression that it hadn't manifested, but it must have been somehow influencing his soul. Yes, that is the only logical explanation, as I, myself, regretfully don't possess it. I refuse to believe that it could be something else. Father. I failed you. Aizen's head fell on his shoulders in sadness. It was in that moment when he felt a pain in his limbs and felt some sticky fluid running on his skin. With surprise, he noticed that the bandages that were restricting his face fell off. "I don't know who you are, but I'll let you know that I cannot be killed as I'm immortal," was the first sentence that Aizen Sasuke muttered after a few days of involuntary silence. At first, he saw nothing, he could only hear footsteps from afar and feel a light powerful enough that it resonated with his soul, but so weak, it couldn't penetrate the eternal and endless darkness of the Mukin. "Show yourself," Aizen said calmly. He wasn't afraid, with Hogyoku inside of him, there was nothing that could kill him. Even Kurosaki Ichigo couldn't do it himself. "Who said anything about killing you, Aizen Sasuke?" Aizen's eyes widened and threatened to fall off. "You, how?" There should have been another year before he was interrupted when the man in front of him raised his hand. "Feel it for yourself, I'm not the man you think I am. We were just hoping that seeing this face would make you remember your roots." With a frown, Aizen tried to feel the man's reiatsu, realizing his mistake. "I see, so what is it that you want? How the hell did you even manage to get here?" The man came closer. "You are behaving differently from your usual calm demeanor. Is it from seeing this face?" Aizen sneered at him. "Just answer." Man grinned smugly. "Let's just say this darkness, the eternal shadow, is our domain. You should know what happened. So this, the Mukin is." Man nodded. "Yes, and you were right, there is still 1 year left, but with your help, we can speed up the process greatly. What do you say, Aizen Sasuke, will you help us?" He walked to Aizen, stopping just a few inches before him, letting him see the outline of his black robe and his long black hair. Aizen shuddered at the small distance between them and his thoughts aimed at one person. "I will not fail again." "Yes, take me to him." Soul Society, Captain's Meeting, 1st Division Barracks. "What?" Captain Commander of the Gotei 13, Yamamoto Genryusai gaped at the rude messenger, who interrupted the captain's meeting in the 1st Division Barracks. It was only the 3rd time in his life that he gaped at someone. But he wasn't the only one. Every captain present was staring at the messenger in shock. Even the indifferent captains, like Kuratsuchi Mayuri and Kenpachi Zaraki, were in utter surprise at the news. "Man, what did I deserve for this?" The messenger thought in panic as the different reiatsu from every captain flared wildly around the room, enough for him to be lying completely on the floor, unable to move. From his eyes, he could see that even the building itself looked like its walls were being pushed back with reiatsu. Yamamoto realized that the messenger couldn't speak, and with few deep breaths, he withdrew his reiatsu from the room, allowing the messenger to at least kneel before him and talk. "Repeat what you just said, and are you positive about it?" "Absolutely, 100% positive?" The messenger gulped and nodded. "Yes, it was checked personally immediately after the alarms went off. Aizen Sasuke has escaped. Hueco Mundo, Minos Forest. We've been running for quite some time without anyone showing up, it's unsettling," Nell commented as they were dashing through the forest. "Yeah, it is." Ichigo agreed and shuddered. "What is it?" Harabel asked him. "I don't know. I get the feeling that something happened in Soul Society." Ichigo replied with a frown. "Heads up, I can feel Ryatsu's signatures ahead of us." Grimjow yelled at them from the front. "I told him to be quiet." Harabel shook her head with a sigh. "Yeah, well, it is Grimjow we're talking about." Ichigo replied and sped up to catch up with the blue-haired Arrancar. He found him standing still, already in a fight stance. "How many?" Ichigo asked him. "I'm not sure, around 20, maybe more." "Seems like it." Harabel agreed next to him. "That master must be someone very powerful or very important. I don't remember that many Ajuchas being under someone's rule aside from Baragan, and even he didn't rule that many Ajuchas, only normal hollows." Nell showed up last. "Got that right, bitch." Large Ajuchas that resembled a polar bear yelled as he came from behind a tree. Grimjow stared at him and turned to others. "Okay, that one's definitely mine." Said Ajuchas growled in response, but didn't attack and waited as his allies slowly surrounded Ichigo, Nell, Harabel and Grimjow. always trying to surround you, boring. Grimjow said and released some of his Ryatsu as a warning. Impressive Ryatsu, but you are outnumbered. Another Ajucha stated, licking his mouth. That doesn't mean we're outgunned. Harabel replied and took out her sword, along with Ichigo and Nell. I see you're getting serious. Oi, Ursio, I'm taking the orange-haired cutie. Female cat-like Ajuchas yelled at the polar bear-like Ajuchas, called Ursio, and readied her claws. Ursio grunted in response. Attack! He exclaimed and the fight began. What is the point of stating who you're taking if there will be at least 5 others that'll do the same? Ichigo sweat dropped and sidestepped the claws of the female Ajuchas, while kicking the tiger one in the face, sending him crashing into the lizard one, who couldn't evade him in time. Ichigo spun around and blocked the incoming Siro with his sword. So that's the difference in Jillian's Siro and the one from Ajuchas. Interesting. He thought while trying to analyze the result. He stabbed behind him, catching the ostrich-like Ajuchas in surprise and drawing first blood. It seems that the difference between a normal Hollow and a Jillian, and between a Jillian and Ajuchas increases exponentially. If that's the case, then Toshiro was right. Fighting capability of Vastolord can be above the captain of Gotei 13. Not that it should surprise me, I already fought almost half of the Espada, but still, it's interesting. The fact that Ichigo looked like he was thinking about something else and still able to fight off multiple Ajuchas effectively, already killing the second one, seemed to enrage the other ones as they started to attack more viciously, gaining his attention back to the fight. Meanwhile, Grimjow was in his element as he was releasing barrage of brutal Ryatsu-empowered kicks and punches all around him, tearing through the Ajuchas, wounding or even killing them. In his battle-intoxicated state, he didn't notice a Siro coming at his back. In the last moment his instincts overrode his delirium and made him widen his eyes as he realized the strength of the Siro. He was in the process of turning when a green-haired person flashed in front of him and swallowed the whole Siro and sending back a strengthened one, getting rid of 2 Ajuchas in an instant. Don't lower your guard, this was a combined Siro and even you could have been injured. Nell scolded Grimjow with a frown. He grunted and sent his own Siro backwards, beheading a small Ajuchas behind him. PFF, it'd be only a small burn at most. And it's none of your business, Neliel. I'd fine without your interference. Nell smirked at him. I know, but right now we're fighting together and we need to be in our best possible condition if we are to fight multiple Vastolord, no matter how unlikely that is. Besides, I wanted to piss you off a little. She shot her tongue at him childishly and flashed away. He widened his eyes and a vein bulged on his forehead, the second time in the same day. Damn woman! He turned and released his anger at the nearest Ajuchas. What are those idiots doing? Harabel fought mildly irritated as she bifurcated a dolphin-like Ajuchas with her blade. Time to speed thing up. She thought and started to charge her Siro, when she had to dodge an unexpectedly fast strike. What shocked her more was the fact that she received a shallow cut above her elbow. It's just like the fight at Las Noches. It should be impossible for Amira Ajuchas to penetrate our Hierro, yet they can somehow do it. I wonder, is it because of their master? Did he do something to them? She threw a cold gaze at the mantis-like Ajuchas who cut her in too fast for him to notice. She flashed in front of him and let her Siro blew its upper body off. Back with Ichigo, he already dispatched 2 more Ajuchas, making the number of Ajuchas that were attacking him drop to 3. And I haven't even used my full Shurikai. Am I still getting stronger? He wondered. Set the darkness ablaze, Zangetsu. But I have to fight in it to be able to control my darkness even further. What is this? Ursio, what is with this one's Ryatsu? The cat Ajuchas yelled as dark energy surrounded Ichigo. At her scream, other Ajuchas stopped attacking and looked at Ichigo with a fear evident in their eyes. You idiot, I thought you listened to the report, he's the one with the strange ability. Don't let those flames touch you, or else. His speech was interrupted when Grimjow's fist made contact with his jaw, sending him flying. Kurosaki, I don't know what that is, but it's giving me goosebumps. We'll definitely have to have a rematch. Grimjow called out to him with a slightly excited voice. Ichigo looked at him incredulously and nodded. Yeah. Crazy bastard. he finished quietly. His eyes landing on the cat Ajuchas, he readied his Zanpakuto. You were the one who said you'll take on me. Where's your bravado now, Ajuchas? Ichigo tried to tempt her into attacking, and when he noticed her angry sneer, he knew he succeeded. What did you say? Die. She flashed to him, aiming a jab at his head. Ichigo slowly and carefully dodged, while silently forcing the dark flames to catch her hand. The cat Ajuchas widened her eyes when she felt something grab her, and with a stinging sensation she fell unconscious. What is that? Harabelle wondered when black energy erupted around Ichigo. She tried to get a feel of it, but when her senses came into contact with it, she recoiled and a cold sweat appeared on her skin. Okay, I don't want to know what that is, I'm just sure I don't come into contact with it. She dodged a slash aimed at her leg by jumping over the Ajucha's claws. With a quick jab, she made a hole in his head, killing the hollow. She looked around herself. Seemed like without a Vasto Lord commanding them, they don't have the necessary ability to remain focused. That's why that group that attacked us at Los Noches was so dangerous. That Vasto Lord was pushing them past their limits, and he even attacked us when we tried to focus completely on Ajuchas. She tilted backwards, avoiding being impaled with a thin claw, and kicked the hand up, creating an opening for an attack. Seeing as the remaining Ajuchas that fought her were in one line, she readied her sword. Ola Azul! She exclaimed as her yellow spiritual energy within the hollow portion of the blade launched towards her opponents in the form of an energy blade projectile, tearing them in half. Ichi, was that always your spiritual energy? It feels terrifying. Nell thought and shivered when she felt the nature of Ichigo's Shurkai. Almost forgetting about her own fight, she cursed silently when she felt one cut on her leg and one on her arm. Yeah, your blood tastes good. Let me have some more, bitch. That Ajuchas licked his bloody claw, grinning widely. Nell gritted her teeth and flashed to the rude hollow, kicking him in head so hard, she tore it off, spraying the blood all over the place. She flashed back to her original position, trying to avoid his blood. Small drop of it landed on her cheek and she wiped it off with her finger. Gross. She muttered, and kicking the ground she jumped high, avoiding Isiro and landing on the remaining Ajuchas' shoulders, stamping him to the ground. Not giving him a chance to recover, she plunged her sword into his skull, stopping his existence. It took only few seconds for Cat Ajuchas to return from being unconscious, but when she did, every hollow on the scene froze from her sudden screaming. Even Nell, Grimmjow and Harabelle stopped in their tracks and stared at the hollow in pain. It was their first time witnessing true power of Ichigo's Zanpakuto, of his darkness element. He never told them about it, as he completely forgot to inform them since they all had more important things on their minds. Gah! Stop it! The Ajuchas screamed, trashing violently on the ground. Fucking idiot, I told her not to dash. Ursio cursed at her fate, but when he got a closer look, he paled from the sight. This is worse than reports. He thought when another blood-curdling scream cut through the forest. The Ajuchas affected with the dark flame was already scratching her head with her claws, creating deep wound all around her face. Grimmjow was the only one who had no problem looking at the scene, but when a spasm went through the victim's body and her arms lowered, even his face showed disgust and small amount of horror at her next actions. Ichigo was already considering withdrawing his flames. He was sure that the hollow wouldn't be able to fight anymore, but in the next second he had to turn away and emptied the contents of his stomach. She must have seen horrible visions when she suddenly aimed her claws at her lower body and plunged her hand into her genitals, violently ripping them out of her body with a sick sound. She held them up in her hand for an instant and laughed crazily. See, now I can't do it anymore, huh? She whispered in deranged voice and fell on the ground, dead. That was sick, Kurosaki. I don't know what you did to her, but it was sick. Grimmjow stated with an obvious disgust in his voice and finished off the hollow in front of him that just stood there, unmoving. I didn't do anything, it was her own darkness that did that to her. Ichigo said after wiping his mouth from the vomit, holding his stomach as another wave came to him. Darkness? Harabelle thought in surprise. She too was rather stupefied and had to look away from the slowly disappearing body. Nell didn't make a sound, but as a pacifist, she wanted to vomit herself. Why you, monster? Ursula shouted and jumped at Ichigo, who winced at that and with a sad face dodged the incoming attack, letting the Ajuchas crash into the tree behind him. With that, the remaining Ajuchas renewed their attacks, this time solely focusing on Ichigo, which proved to be their mistake, as they haven't noticed that the other 3 survivors from Las Noches flashed to him for help. Now that the Hollows were in a small shock from the events that took place just a moments ago, they became an easy prey for the vastly superior opponents. Their attacks being chaotic and slowed down, they proved to be no match against the brute power of Grimmjow's punches, Nell's kicks, or Haribel's slashes. It, however, provided Ichigo with enough time to get his stomach under control. The more I use this power, the more sick I become of myself. They say that the Zanpakuto comes from within your soul. Is my soul like that? Ichigo wondered. Of course not, Ichigo, it's exactly the opposite. That's why you are the best candidate to bear this power. Only you can use it responsibly. As I told you before, this is still just a small price to pay for being able to protect, although fear not, when your power will become complete, you will see not just the darkness but also the light. Deep voice in his mind answered him, calming him down a little. In that case, I cannot wait for my power to become complete. Fought and shot a quick bala at his opponents. The chaotic fight was at the end soon enough, with only the Ursula remaining alive, although badly wounded. Ichigo cautiously came closer to him. Tell me, who is your so-called master? The Hollow laughed raspily. You'll see soon enough, but only for a short time, as you're no match for him, no matter how strong you are. His laughter died as he blew his final breath. Well, that was fucking helpful. Grimmjow commented sarcastically and cracked his knuckles. Yeah, is anyone injured? I think we should rest for a minute, there's no point in rushing too much. Ichigo stated and looked at his companions. They were mostly unharmed, but he didn't miss a few scratches on their legs, arms and faces. Good idea. Haribel nodded and sat down, leaning backwards to the nearest tree. Right here? Ichigo asked in surprise. Sure, since we just proved our strength, there shouldn't be anyone who'd try to disrupt our rest. Nell answered and sat next to Haribel, further from Ichigo than she used to, what he noticed instantly. I guess my ability scared you? He muttered sadly. Nell looked at Haribel tentatively and sighed. Well, not scared per se, just, well, it wasn't a pleasant sight. What did you do exactly to her? She asked quietly. Haribel also glanced at him with a small amount of interest and caution. Well, that was the ability of my Zanpakuto, the darkness element. Specifically, the dark flames that makes you relive your inner darkness and shows you your darkest desires and sins. Inter-fucking-esting, but why did she, did that? Grimmjow asked with disgust. Well, those visions are supposed to be quite vivid and real. I don't and can't know what she saw, but it must have been something really bad. When I used it last time, at the Las Noches, the guy plucked out his own eyes and crushed his own skull with his bare hands. Ichigo replied, covering his mouth when he remembered that particular scene. Nell wasn't faring better and swallowed heavily. I can control the flames somewhat, so I won't let them touch you, but even if they did, I don't think the effects would be so severe. It works mostly on bad guys whose souls are extremely tainted with darkness. Pure beings shouldn't be affected. Ichigo glanced at Grimmjow. But on some of you it could actually be quite bad. He finished. Oi! Grimmjow looked at him, deciding if he should have taken that last comment as an insult or a compliment. But you didn't have that power previously? Haribel asked, confused. Ichigo grimaced and scratched his head. Yeah, well, it was like this. Soul Society, Captain's Meeting, 1st Division Barracks. What is your report, Captain Kuratsuchi? Captain Commander asked tiredly. After the shocking news that Aizen Sasuke managed to escape, captain of all squads were on high alert, trying to find some clue about the traitor's new whereabouts but without any luck. Captain of the 12th Division came forward with a grim expression. I have little to none new information about this matter. As we all know, Muken serves as a subdimension of the Soul Society and was created even before your birth, Captain Commander, so there are almost no data concerning it. Until this day, we, the Gotei 13 used this place for punishing the worst criminals in history of Seoul society. Not one of them ever saw the light of the day after they got sentenced into that place. There is also almost no way of monitoring the area, we can only monitor the criminals. That way we found out about Aizen Sasuke's getaway, since the device just stopped working all of a sudden. It's almost as if that person vanished into thin air. We cannot be even sure if he's alive at this point. Yamamoto listened to him warily. Is that all? Mayuri looked insulted for a moment but managed to mask it with a cough. Of course not. We determined that moments before his disappearance, Aizen Sasuke came into contact with another person. After that statement, a shocked murmur appeared among captains. What are you talking about, Captain Mayuri? It should be impossible for anyone to enter Mukin other was than through the first division compound. Kayaraku objected. Yes, I am aware of that, Captain Kayaraku. Mayuri sneered at him and looked at his papers. That unknown person is also peculiar in a sense that he, or she, somehow possessed more than one Ryatsu signature. One signature was completely unfamiliar to us, but the second one. He turned to Yamamoto and stared at him with a strange expression, as if trying to accuse him of something mixed with a bit of fear. The second one is very much similar to the Ryatsu signature that could have been felt all across the Siratii almost 1,000 years ago. Most of the captains looked at each other in confusion, but their eyes widened when a weak sound of something hitting the floor was heard. The cane that Captain Commander of the Gotei 13 always had with him, the cane that masked his Zanpakuto, fell on the floor and the commander itself visibly shook. Yamaji? Kayaraku momentarily forgot about honorifics and looked at his teacher in surprise. Impossible. Yamamoto gasped and clenched his fist. What's going on? Suifeng asked with her eyes firmly set on the Captain Commander. Said Shinigami gulped and grabbed his cane back. From now on, the escape of Aizen Sasuke and the existence of that unknown person shall be treated as a top-secret information. All captains, not even your lieutenants, can know about this for now. Captain Suifeng, what are the whereabouts of Kurosaki Ichigo? What? Most of the captain looked at him in a shock. Well, I wouldn't tell that to Momo either way. Toshiro thought immediately, but he was too baffled with the sudden interest about the whereabouts of Ichigo. I heard that the group of Arankars that he helped after Aizen's defeat were being attacked by someone, so he rushed to Waco Mundo to help them. That was few days ago and he's yet to come back. Suifeng quickly replied. God damn it, that foolish boy. Yamamoto cursed, surprising the rest of the captains further. What's with the interest with the Ichi-chan? Jin asked quietly, for once not sneering or smiling. In fact, the news about Aizen's escape hit him hard and he was trying to hold himself from going berserk. Captain Suifeng, how far have you come with the research about Kurosaki Ichigo's roots? I assume not very far. Captain Commander ignored the question and focused on the captain of the second squad, who started to sweat as she felt the intense pressure on her shoulders. Yes, I managed to find out that his two sisters are both spiritually aware, one posse's weak Ryatsu while the other one's Ryatsu was quite strong for a human. Not on Kurosaki Ichigo's level, but it's still very interesting. I couldn't find out anything about his father, it's almost as if he's been hiding. I only found out two things. First one is his name, Kurosaki Ishin, and the second one is that he shares some connection or friendship with the last known Quincy, Ishida Ryukin. Yamamoto's eyes widened further. Ishin, can it be? Ishida Ryukin? No. This can't be all a coincidence, can it? If Kurosaki Ichigo is his son and... His eyes almost bulged out. God damn it, that foolish boy twice. He cursed loudly again. What is it? Yukitake asked nervously. He never saw his old mentor curse. That must have meant things were extremely serious. I have a theory concerning the Kurosaki boy, and if I'm right, the boy is even more important person than we thought he is, on a whole another scale. All captains, make preparation. We need to retrieve the boy as soon as we can. He gripped his cane and gritted his teeth. I'll notify the Zero Squad. Hueco Mundo, deep in the Minos forest. So you managed to come this far, huh? A creepy voice taunted them. Fuck this. Nell, Grimjow, Harabel and Ichigo cursed mentally when they looked around. After their little rest, they further followed the path, trying to finally reach the enemy camp. They have reached it all right. But the enemy was prepared and was awaiting them. I told you something was fishy about this. Ichigo muttered to Harabel. Who knew that he would have a small army prepared for us? She replied with a hint of fear in her voice. At the moment, things weren't looking good for the quartet. They were being surrounded again. But this time, their opponents were 10 Basto Lord, which combined Ryatsu made Harabel sweat quite a lot. What do? We didn't consider the possibility of them having this much Basto Lord. Nell asked worriedly. We fight, we have no other choice. Grimjow stated with a small bead of sweat falling from his forehead. Ichigo gritted his teeth. I was right, Grimjow obtained that information too easily. It was a trap all along, but what the question is why? I hate to agree with him, but Grimjow is right. We have no other choice but fight them. If you 3 can take on 6 of them, I can try to fight the remaining 4 myself. Ichigo whispered. What? Are you insane? Even Aizen would have trouble with 4 of them, and as you said, you can't even use your Bankai. Nell protested vigorously. I agree with Nell, that's a suicide. Take 3, if we all release our Resurrection from the beginning, maybe we can take them by surprise and somehow take 7 of them. Harabel nodded at Nell. Fine, we won't know until we'll try, right? Ichigo snapped and stood straight. Oh? Not scared? A tall Vasto Lord asked. They only frowned and raised their swords. Set the darkness ablaze, Zangetsu. Grind, Pantera. Declare, Gamuza. Destroy, Tiburon. As the 4 of them released their power, the sudden surge of Ryatsu cleared the area from the sand, surprising the Vasto Lord with the amount of it. But the quartet widened their eyes, when another person suddenly appeared behind the Vasto Lord, releasing even bigger amount of Ryatsu than all of them combined, forcing all of them, save for Ichigo, who however had to lower himself a bit too, on their knees from the sheer raw power. The fuck is that? It feels like Aizen after few of his transformations, but yet it's different, chaotic, almost as if the Ryatsu alone emitted an emotion, pain. Ichigo thought in shock. Ah, you have quite the nice Ryatsu, especially you. Kurosaki Ichigo. I have been expecting you. Ichigo widened his eyes at the sudden realization. You are the master, aren't you? Said person came forward, further shocking them with his appearance. It's just like Kurosaki's mask. Harabel thought alarmed. What is going on? Ichigo gripped his Zanpakuto. Who are you? He yelled. The master came even closer, further showing his shockingly similar appearance to Ichigo's Resurrection. He chuckled. Who am I? That's an interesting question, young one. I don't have a name. Even if I did in my past, after so many millennia I don't remember it. He leveled his gaze with Ichigo. But since I am the first hollow that came into existence, you can call me the Ancient. Chapter 11, Waco Mundo PT4, The Ancient. Many things ran through the mind of the Shinigami representative, Kurosaki Ichigo, while staring at the enemy, threateningly standing only few steps away from him. Did he say first hollow ever? How old is he? Why does he look like that, so similar to my Resurrection? Why did he want to meet me? Why isn't he attacking? What's with his Ryatsu? Did he say first hollow ever? Ichigo wanted to ask so much but felt that his tongue was too heavy to form any question. From the short moment he was able to assess the enemy, he was sure that without his Bankai, he was outclassed. He wasn't scared nor did he panic. He was just trying to keep his cool and analyze the situation properly, like Urahara taught him so long ago. Ah, you are probably wondering what is going on here, right? The Ancient casually walked around him in circles, watching him carefully. Answer he received was a short nod. It took him few more moments before speaking again, mumbling incoherently the whole time. You're making me sad, Kurosaki Ichigo. I was awaiting you at your full power, but yet it seems you have not unlocked your every potential so far. I'm so disappointed. Surprisingly, the old hollow truly showed some kind of sadness behind his mask. Meanwhile, Ichigo noticed two small details. First one was the fact that the ancient was missing a small part of his mask. Truly a tiny piece was chipped above his right eye. Second one was more of a large detail than a small one. It was a truly horrific scar that ran from his left shoulder all the way diagonally to his right hip. It was the second thing that intrigued the substitute Shinigami more. The fact that he's the first hollow ever, and his Ryatsu makes him truly a monster. I don't think I want to meet the one who gave him that scar. The ancient noticed Ichigo's curious gaze and grinned in amusement, which resulted in a frightening grimace. I see that you're wondering about my scar, and if I had to guess, what you're thinking right now is, wow, I don't want to fight the one who did it, or something along this line. He chuckled when Ichigo's eyes widened a little bit. Well, you'll be surprised to know that you have already met him. What? Ichigo thought. The ancient ran with his clawed finger along his scar. This is the only injury I ever received that threatened to take my life, and it was done 1,000 years ago by none other than Genryusai Yamamoto, the captain commander of the Gotei 13. He did it to me with his Bankai. A shiver ran through Ichigo's body. Old man in Bankai did this, damn, he must have been, 1,000 years ago? What happened 1,000 years ago? Ichigo asked suddenly. Heh, you got over that surprise rather quickly. The ancient chuckled darkly, and without any announcement, he spun around and flashed to Ichigo with his claws raised, trying to slash at him with them. Ichigo barely had the time to spare, but with luck he managed to block the attack, although the raw strength of it sent him flying backwards. After few flips, he landed on the ground, this time prepared for a strike, but the ancient just stood there, grinning wildly. Good, if you couldn't block that, I would be just wasting my time. Ichigo, startled by that statement, noticed that no one else moved since the ancient showed himself. Must be frozen in fear. The ancient slowly walked away and sat on the throne made completely of bones, that suddenly rose from the ground. If you want to know more about what happened 1,000 years ago and how it's connected with you, or about the hidden potential that resides in you, or about anything else, well, you have to defeat my subordinates first. He chuckled again, nodding to the Vasto Lord around them to initiate attack. Damn! Ichigo cursed, and as fast as he could, he flashed to his companions, and in quick succession, he blocked, threw or kicked away 4 Vasto Lord that he wanted to take on. Through the exchange between Ichigo and the ancient, Nell kept looking at Harabel, trying to find in her face anything that could ease her worries. Sadly, Harabel herself was in a small shock, something which was completely uncharacteristic of her. Grimjo, however, probably for the first time in his life, felt fear. He was bloodthirsty, but even he understood the situation. If the ancient decided to dispose of them, not even Kurosaki Ichigo could save them. With that in mind, he switched his focus and concentrated his instincts on the Vasto Lords surrounding them. Fuck it. I wanted to fight, but this is bad. I'll have to go all out if I want to win, but after that I'll be an easy lunch for the ancient fucker. Fuck Grimjow, get your act together, you're the king. Swallowing his pride, he turned to Harabel and Nell and motioned them to listen to him. Listen, you two. Even I understand the situation, and I think that we need to work together or we are dead fucking meat. He whispered and grimaced when they widened their eyes. But if either of you mention to Kurosaki that I proposed this idea first, I'll kick your asses, understood? Sure, but what can we do? If that old one decided to fight Ichigo, then I'm not sure we can take on 10 Vasto Lord ourselves. Nell said quietly. They were interrupted when Ichigo was suddenly blasted in the air. Shit, I couldn't even see the attack. Grimjow thought bitterly. After the statement from the ancient, Harabel turned to them. Well, you heard it, it seems that the ancient is interested in Kurosaki. That means that we can fight those Vasto Lord with Kurosaki's help, and after that we can breathe easier, but even as I'm saying it, I'm doubtful. Nell and Grimjow nodded and took their defensive stances when Ichigo blocked the 4 of Vasto Lord, taking them away from the trio. Damn it, Kurosaki, I told you to take 3 only. If the ancient wants to fight you after this, you'll be dead in no time. Harabelle thought in irritation as she had to quickly focus on the fight, when a slash was aimed at her head. She parried it with her Tiburon, jumping above the attacker. Trident! She exclaimed, shooting high-pressured water, infused with her Ryuryoku at the Vasto Lord below her. Cursing under her breath when another hollow jumped and blocked the attack, she landed in front of her 2 opponents. Hey, we got the coal-ass bitch. Good, we can take our time to melt that attitude. Both of the Vasto Lord chuckled, staring at Harabelle with lecherous eyes. My name is Dash. La Gata. Harabelle interrupted them with another attack, successfully injuring the taller of the Vasto Lord. I don't need to know the names of the trash like you, Harabelle stated, unconsciously imitating Ulquiorra's attitude. Gah! Bitch cut off my arm. Wounded Hollow whined in pain. Shit! Harabelle cursed when the second Vasto Lord wasn't in front of her anymore and she instinctively moved. She gritted her teeth when blood spurted from her left shoulder. Don't take your eyes off us, Arrancar. Second Vasto Lord mocked her from behind her. Harabelle focused and sent some of her Ryuryoku to the wound, at least stopping the blood. It seems that this will be tough. Even if they are Vasto Lord, they shouldn't have been this strong. As I suspected with those Ajuchas, the ancient must have somehow raised their strength. Garra de la Pantera. 4 acutely shaped bombs were fired from Grimjaw's elbow, trying to hit his opponents. The blue-haired Arrancar was forced to bring out the heavy artillery early in his fight, after being outsmarted and after that enraged, when he got slashed across his back. He was distracted by the magnitude of Harabelle's attacks and lost sight of his opponents for a moment, which costed him. After the explosions cleared, his grin returned although in weakened state, as the enemy was wounded just not as bad as he hoped. Both sides pissed off, they flashed across the land, meeting in the center, exchanging punches and kicks and occasional slashes. Grimjaw was having a hard time. His fighting style was unpredictable, what was one of the things that kept him on equal grounds with the enemy hollows. But other than that, Grimjaw was bitterly aware that from the 4 of them that came here, he was the weakest member. His blows were having only little effect on the Vasto Lord, grazing them, cutting them, breaking small bones, but other than that, no serious injury. On the other hand, enemies' claws were giving them an edge. They were long enough and sharp enough to warrant Grimjaw's attention and he had to avoid them every time, or they would cut through his arrow. They weren't creating heavy injuries, but eventually, he would bled out even from the simple deep scratches or cuts. Spinning in the air and hitting one of the hollows with his Ryuryoku-empowered kick, he allowed himself a deep breath. Gay-er! He roared point-blank at the second Vasto Lord, sending him flying with the produced shockwave. He quickly sent his Ryuryoku to the deeper cuts, stopping the bleeding. Fuck, they're tough. I'm losing energy fast. Grimjaw cursed under his breath and flashed to his opponents, intending on not giving them any room to breathe. So they want to fight in close range and to aim at my weak spots. Nell thought as she kicked her foes with surprising speed, giving herself some space. Despero Verde. She aimed her lance at them, shooting several bright high-speed projectiles from it. Wanting to finish the job quickly, she sent the second attack moments after that. Lanzador Verde. Her lance swished through the air, gathering more energy and spin as it cut the distance between her and the Vasto Lord, hitting the area where they were recovering, dead on. Using her Ryuryoku, she called the lance back to her hands and waited. Her eyes widened when something bursted from the smoke and she blocked the incoming attack. The Vasto Lord that attacked her was mildly burned and missing some chunks of his body around the stomach area, but it was slowly healing. High-speed regeneration? She thought, but the small chuckle that escaped from her opponent's mouth unnerved her. That saved her from serious injuries as the one in front of her suddenly ducked and she came face to face with a bright blue Ciro, coming from the smoke. She managed to open her mouth and to swallow it just in time. Ciro Doble. She sent it back to its originator, but the Vasto Lord that was close to her wasn't just standing to and without any chance to block, only slightly sidestepping it, she received a triple cut to her side. Gah! She gasped from the pain and jumped backwards immediately. The hollow that wounded her licked his claws, tasting her blood. He savored the taste and grinned at her maliciously. "Why do I always get the creepy ones?" Nell thought in irritation as she readied her lance for another attack. Ichigo was narrowly watching his opponents, utilizing his concentration to the utmost levels. Facing 4 Vasto Lord was giving him no other option. With every muscle in his being strained in stress, he reacted quickly when the smallest of them suddenly flashed to him, flaring his dark flames and trying to scare the hollow away. With his instincts screaming at him, he bent over, dodging the claws of the second attacker, slashing at his right and cutting the third Vasto Lord. He stumbled, however, when the fourth opponent successfully kicked him in the stomach, catching him off guard. Damn, Harabel was right, 4 of them is too much. His thoughts were interrupted when a vague cry cut through the air, courtesy of the hollow who touched his flames. Ichigo glanced at him, noticing him panting heavily on the ground, and realized that this was the opportunity he needed. With one of his enemies out of the combat for a while, maybe he could do some damage. With that in mind, he flashed as fast as he could to the one who previously kicked him, his Zanpakuto high in the air, glowing with energy. Getsuga Tensho. Crescent Wave caught the hollow off guard and sent him flying to the distance. Instinctively, Ichigo immediately ducked, when he heard something flying at him and narrowly escaping a bright green Siro. Siro, huh? Let me show you mine. He raised and pointed his finger at the Vasto Lord and gathered great amount of hollow Ryuryoku in it. Su-ro. He stumbled in the middle of releasing it, when the hollow he forgot about grazed his shoulder with his claws. Damn! Ichigo cursed. With luck on his side, however, he observed the trajectory of his Siro, that hit the mark either way. The victim was, however, not the one he aimed at, but the one who was still panting on the ground, after coming into contact with Ichigo's flames. Just before the Siro hit him, the hollow raised his head and couldn't do anything besides widening his eyes in horror. He was engulfed in grand explosion, obscuring his being from sight. Getting over his surprise quickly, the remaining 2 Vasto Lord attacked Ichigo, simultaneously slashing at his face and torso. Blocking the attacks with Zangetsu, Ichigo was blown away when something collided with him. Bala. The Vasto Lord that Ichigo sent flying with his Getsuga came from the forest, heavily bleeding from the deep gash in his chest. Ichigo wasn't holding back, and the Getsuga he used was easily the double strength he used the last time. Damn you, Shinigami. The injured hollow cursed and fell on the ground, unconscious, but not dead yet. Shit. I thought he was done for. Ichigo thought bitterly when he got up. His robe got slightly tattered and he was bleeding slightly from the cut on his head. Anjutsu no Ka. He yelled and sent a wave of dark flames at his opponents, giving himself a little room to breathe. Glancing at his left, he was that the hollow that was struck with his Siro was slowly getting up, covered in horrible burns that were slowly healing. Come on. Can't he stay down? He flashed to him, wanting to get rid of some of his opponents. When he started to gather Ryuryoku into his blade for another Getsuga, he remembered the short training he underwent in Siriti, the face of Hachijin jumping to his mind. Letting his sword fall next to him, he punched the hollow, sending him to the ground once again, and aimed his finger at him. The Vasto Lord, seeing the stance, thought of another Siro coming at him and surrendered to the fate, as he was sure that he couldn't survive another and he was too injured to be able to dodge it. Noticing that, Ichigo frowned. He never liked the kind of people who wouldn't fight their fate. Well, what can you do? He thought and gathered the needed Ryuryoku to the point of his finger. Heido number 4, Byakurai. Blue stream of electricity shot out of his finger, aiming at the hollow's shoulder, but in the end, the Vasto Lord tried to dodge it in reflex and ended with the Heido piercing his head, killing him instantly. Ichigo grimaced in disgust when blood splashed behind the hollow gruesomely and he had to turn away. And he did it just in time as the 2 Vasto Lord finally sprung into action, after having to dodge his Anjutsu no Ka. Ichigo stood still, and when they were close enough, again he raised only his finger and pointed at them, ushering 2 Kitos in quick succession. Heido number 1, Sho. Bakuto number 1, Sai. Not expecting Kito, the first hollow was blasted back with force as Ichigo put too much of his Ryuryoku into the attack, while the second one got his hands twisted behind his back and cried in pain. Ichigo grasped his Zanpakuto and in an instant he gathered energy into the blade, powering up a Getsuga. However, instead of releasing it, he let the powered-up sword cut through the binded hollow, bifurcating him, and only after that, he released the gathered energy. Getsuga Tensho. The slightly weaker Getsuga was reflected with the claws of the hollow that was previously blasted with Sho, instead hitting the unconscious Vasto Lord, finally killing him. Ichigo raised one eyebrow. Either I'm a lucky son of a, or they absolutely don't care for what happens to their comrades. Seeing that the last Vasto Lord sped to him, he allowed himself a deep breath and waited for him to attack. For the next few moments, he decided only to dodge the strikes, looking for an opening in the defense. The hollow was quickly getting angry, which led to his demise. In one of his slashes, he put too much force into it, and when Ichigo dodged it left him defenseless against attacks. What Ichigo noticed and quickly poured his hollow Ryuryoku into his hands. Bala! He shouted and sent 2 shots of energy towards the hollow, who could only look as his body was blasted away, since his energy was almost wasted, leaving his Hiero drastically weakened. Ichigo wiped a bead of sweat from his brow and looked around to see how his companions were doing. Fuck these two, I guess there's no other choice but use that. Grimmjow gritted his teeth and held his shoulder, which was heavily bleeding from the numerous injuries. His 2 opponents weren't faring so much better and they spurted some heavy wound too, the second one spitting blood on the ground. Thanks to his unpredictability, Grimmjow managed to hold his own against them, getting few lucky shots with his Gara de Lu Pantera, dealing fair amount of damage. Since that moment, however, the duo in front of him started to cooperate, slowly gaining advantage, leaving Grimmjow now with no other choice. Listen here you fuckers, I'm gonna show it to you only once, so watch carefully and try not to die instantly. He grinned painfully and raised the hand he was previously clutching his shoulder with. Yeah, that should do it. He thought when he saw the amount of blood on his palm and gathered his Ryuryoku. Aiming the palm at this opponents who widened their eyes in realization, he yelled. Gran Race Zero. Thick torrent of blue energy escaped his hand, hitting the Vasto Lord instantly and generated a huge explosion. The air around him was still cracking from the amount of the energy used as he collapsed on the ground, absolutely exhausted. Fuck, I hope the faggots are dead, or I'll be the one dead soon. From the ground he glanced at the place where the blast started and sighed in satisfaction. His opponents were charred from explosion, their eyes rolled back in their heads, dead and already disappearing. Grimmjow tried to stand but he was too tired, so instead he lied down, trying to catch his breath. Well, either you'll do some miracle, or we're fucked, Kurosaki. Cascada. Harabelle watched as her attack halted the progress of the duo that tried to attack her together. As the water subsided, it was obvious who would win the fight. Harabelle was spurting numerous cuts and gashes, but was nowhere near inured as Grimmjow was. On the other hand, her opponents were breathing heavily, raising from the ground again, but very slowly. It is quite odd. At the beginning, they were very strong, stronger than they should have been, but that power is slowly decreasing as the time passes. What did he do to them? She wondered absent-mindedly as her mind wandered towards the ancient. A huge explosion woke her from her musings and she glanced at her left to see the remnants of bluish trail of energy, coming from Grimmjow's position. She raised her eyebrow. Well, for the first time I have to admit that it isn't that much of a bad idea, Grimmjow. Touching her stomach, where she had the deepest gash, she smeared her palm with her own blood and gathered the needed energy. Gran Race Zero! She exclaimed and sent a golden torrent of energy at the helpless Vasto Lord, who only sighed in defeat moment before the Zero hit them, killing them quickly. She almost smirked when the produced explosion was almost twice as big as Grimmjow's. With a deep breath she turned around. Nell was the last one who thought of the Gran Race Zero and she hurried to do the same. She was faring better than Grimmjow, but she was more wounded than Harabelle and wanted to do nothing else than to finish her fight as her opponents creeped her out. Faster than the Vasto Lord could notice, she gathered some blood on her hand and poured her Ryuryoku in it, releasing her own version of the ultimate Zero, green in color. Breathing quickly and heavily, as the action tired her out, she sadly observed the end of her enemies. They indeed creeped her out, yet they were still living beings. Sighing, she raised her head and headed to Ichigo's position. A huge burden fell from Ichigo's heart as he found out that despite their injuries, his companions seemed to be just fine. Just as he wanted to flash to them, Deep Voice interrupted him. "Bravo! I almost thought that 4 of them were too much for you, Kurosaki Ichigo." The ancient finally made himself known again. Ichigo reacted instantly and twisted himself around in anticipation of a sudden attack. The ancient only chuckled. My, you're quite jumpy, aren't you, young one? But fear not, as you have a little time before you'll need those reflexes in a combat again. For now." Ichigo gritted his teeth when suddenly a massive amount of Ryatsu hit him, making him sweat bullets and pinning the rest of his comrades to the ground, preventing them from getting close to him. "Let's talk." "What?" Ichigo looked at him in confusion as soon as the pressure disappeared. The ancient grinned slightly at him. "I promised that after you defeated my subordinates, I'd explain some things to you, and I'll keep my word. You are, however, free to try and attack me in the meantime." He finished with a sinister grimace, making Ichigo gulp. Instead of attacking, he sat on the ground, having no other choice. "I'm not stupid to take the bait. If we can get out of here without having to fight him, I'd be a lot happier." Good. The old hollow clapped his hands. "Do pardon me, however. I said that I'd explain things to you, but it cannot be done without a story. So make yourself comfortable, as you'll need to hear me out." "Oh. But the names in the following story are completely fictional, as my memory grew old." He grinned again, but after that his face under the mask grew serious. "Let me start with what happened many thousands of years before today, with something that changed this very world. Flashback, many thousands years ago. Elsie, love, where are you?" Michael sang happily as he jogged towards his home in anticipation of next 2 free days spent with his only love. "I'm here, sweetie." A beautiful woman in her mid-30s emerged from the small hut, lovingly caressing her inflated pregnant belly. Michael quickly jumped towards her and put her ear on her navel. "Don't tell me he has been kicking again and I missed it. Oh, the ungrateful heavens!" he exclaimed dramatically as Elsie chuckled and smiled at him. "You dummy, it isn't such a big deal. After he's born you'll be able to hear him as much as you can." Michael looked at her horrified. "Blasphemy! What if he's trying to tell me something and I wasn't there to hear him?" His wife just chuckled again and kissed him on the forehead. "You worry too much, honey. Come inside, I made your favorite soup." Michael's eyes glowed with excitement. "Oh goody. These past 2 weeks were horrendous. There was nothing else than meat and even more meat." He whined and slowly walked into the hut, where the 2 of them ate their lunch. Michael and Elsie were a happily married couple, living in the middle of nowhere, a long distance from any civilization, not that there were many civilized people in that era. They were practically farmers, living from what they grew or what Michael could hunt down in the nearby woods. Michael originally grew up in a small village where he was taught the basic things needed for survival, like hunting wild animals, building a hut for himself, or how to find a fresh drinking water. He was, however, not satisfied with the small area that the village was. His instincts were telling him to abandon this kind of living, to go and explore the wide world, the unknown land. At the age of 15 he finally decided and snuck from the settlement, leaving only small note for his parents, who never really took care of him anyway and preferred for him to survive on his own. For the next few years, he wandered through the vast lands, trying many barbaric or peaceful jobs, eventually landing in an unexplored area, where he met Elsie. She was like a gift from gods to him and he fell in love with her on the first sight. At first, she was scared of him as his appearance wasn't very sympathetic and he kept his beard untrimmed for many months. After he showed her no ill intentions and she got to know him better, she accepted his company. During many following weeks, even months, Michael showed her how to live better, richer, and more than anything, how to be not alone. It didn't take long before she fell in love with him too. At the beginning, he suspected that there was something from her past that prevented her from being caring towards him, or preventing her from loving him, but eventually her resistance broke. Ever since the day that Elsie admitted her love to him, they were living on a cloud of happiness that grew even bigger after she announced that she was carrying his child. That day, for the first time in his life, Michael cried from pure happiness. Now, Elsie was already in her last month of pregnancy and they were expecting her to give birth to the baby every day, which was the reason for Michael's departure for 2 weeks. It was so that he could gather as much stock as possible, leaving them with enough material so that he wouldn't be forced to abandon his newborn child for at least few weeks. He had so many plans for his child. It didn't matter if it was a daughter or a son. He would spend as much time with them as he could, unlike his parents. He would show them unconditional love, he would support them, play with them and teach them everything he knew. However, the day he returned from his 2-week departure, everything went downhill for them. "So, honey, what do you want to do?" He wagged his eyebrows at her suggestively, making her blush. "Oh, stop it, you. I told you we can't risk having sex until the baby's born." She hushed him in embarrassment and went out to drink from the well. Michael lied on the bed content when he suddenly felt weird, as if he was in presence of something unnatural. His head started to spin, his breathing getting heavy. It lasted only a few moments, but when Elsie came inside, he knew he wasn't imagining things. His wife was completely drained from color, her once tan skin almost white and her face showed horror. Sweetie? What's wrong?" Michael jumped from the bed, trying not to sway on his feet. His voice seemed to shook Elsie as she looked at him scared. "He found me. He found me, he found me." She was mumbling in fear, and when Michael tried to hug her, she backed away from him. "Elsie?" he asked, uncertain of her behavior. I need to lie down," she said, and after a second she led him to guide her towards the bed where they spent the night, neither of them getting any sleep. From that day onward, Elsie seemed constantly scared of something, looking around with fear in her eyes. Nothing Michael did could penetrate her defensive walls. "It's just like we first met, but stronger," he thought sadly. He wanted to help her, desperately so, but she wouldn't let him. When he tried to cheer her up with the thought of the child, she smiled for a second, but then it morphed into a horrified grimace and she started to cry uncontrollably. He never mentioned the baby again. Not until it was born. Elsie gave birth almost 3 full weeks after the incident. That moment managed to cheer her up only for a few days, but after that, she fell into depression again. As the week passed by, their stock of material grew thin and Michael eventually had to leave for a few days to gather them again. Reluctantly, he departed, praying to God that he would keep his wife and his newborn son safe. He returned 3 days later. That day, he forsake every god known to him. That day, feeling dread and hearing only the wind, he walked into his hut. That day, he found his wife's and his newborn child's lifeless bodies on the bloodied floor, laying there unmoving, with their eyes open. That day, he fell on his knees and cried until his body was drained from fluids and his eyes couldn't produce tears anymore. That day, he felt uncontrollable anger, an animal rage that was built into the core of his very being. That day, he looked down and found a hand sticking from his chest. That day, he spit blood on the floor but managed to turn around to see a silhouette of a man with short silver hair materialize from thin air. "This was the last day you hid my wife from me, human," was the only thing he heard, before the world in front of his eyes disappeared. The present. Ichigo was listening to the story with wide eyes, trying to understand but failing miserably. "I don't understand. It is a sad story, all right, but how?" The ancient shook his head. "I'll explain. The man, Michael in this story, was me." Ichigo gaped at him in shock. Then, the first hollow ever sighed. "I learned many things on that day and onward. The man that killed me was the original husband of Elsie. The two of them were both from the spiritual world, from the afterlife. Both of them were souls, first souls that showed signs of spiritual energy. Tremendous amounts of spiritual energy at that. They were a couple long time before I met Elsie and lived a happy life, creating a pleasant afterlife for every soul that flew to their world." He stopped and closed his eyes tiredly. "But then, I don't know when or what, something happened and Elsie ran away from him. Using her spiritual powers, she crossed to the world of the living and took over dying body of a young girl, who was terminally ill. She sent the soul to the afterlife but took her body as her own, healing it quickly.
After some time I met her and the rest is known.
Her husband was looking for her everywhere since that day, but she was adept at hiding her spiritual energy, so it took him years to find her. That was the day she changed. I found out that he appeared in front of her and gave her some time to give birth, as he wouldn't take a life of an unborn, and to say goodbye to me. When she gave birth, he waited until I departed and killed their bodies, taking their souls away to the afterlife with him. He wasn't completely satisfied, however, and feeling that a human would take his wife, in rage he waited for me and killed me. That was a mistake. He went silent for a moment to gather his words. Meanwhile, Ichigo's mind was in overdrive, trying to make heads and tails from everything. After a minute, the ancient continued. It seems that being around Elsie affected my very soul, giving me the ability to possess some spiritual energy on my own, and when I died, all of it emerged from my body. Until that day, humans were dying every day but no hollow existed. When the remaining energy emerged from me, the pain I felt in my heart tore it to pieces, drawing the energy back and creating a hollow mask, thus, creating the first hollow. The process, however, created a spiritual shockwave that resonated through the world of the living, changing the souls of human beings forever, allowing them to linger on their feelings even after death. That way, a human being, after death, held two options: to die and stay a plus soul, or to die with lingering feelings and transform into a hollow. His Ryatsu flared for a while, making Ichigo sweat even more. Ichigo was at loss of words. Naturally, I was devastated, but I couldn't just roam the world of the living, nor could I have been allowed to the afterlife. So that man, using his immense spiritual powers, created a whole another dimension for us, hollows, the Hueco Mundo. He took the vast, cursed sands of the ancient Egypt and used them to create this nothingness. Why do you think that Moses could hear the God when he traveled the desert? Because it overlaps with Hueco Mundo. It's more complicated than that, but I'll leave it on your imagination to make a connection. I wanted to see my wife and my son again, but I couldn't do a thing. Later, I found out that they took care of my son, leaving him to live as he wanted. Not long after that, Elsie had another child, Osiris, whom you nowadays know as the Soul King. From his early age he blessed the beings, known as Shinigami, who were created after the souls in afterlife were exposed to the spiritual energy of the Soul King's parents, and that way, noble clans came to existence. As Soul King? Ichigo asked, baffled. Yes, the throne that ruled the afterlife was left to the second child, not to my son. The ancient flared his Ryatsu again. Why are you telling me this? Ichigo asked, trying not to get floored with the pressure. The ancient suddenly grinned. Why? It's simple, but I'll get to that. But as I was saying, the Soul King got to rule the afterlife, which didn't bode that well with my son. Eventually, more than 1,000 years ago, he finally somehow learned the truth and he found me. I told him my story, trying to convince him that he is the one who should be ruling the afterlife as the elder sibling. It turned out he didn't need any convincing. He was already aiming at the throne. So, 1,000 years ago, with my help, he attacked the afterlife, in that time already known as the Soul Society. It was the only way, since the Soul King resided in his own dimension, not allowing even his sibling to see him. He gritted his teeth in frustration. We, however, encountered heavy resistance. Soul Society had something that was called divisions, at which lead position stood a devious and exceptionally strong Shinigami with the name of Genryosai Shigakuni Yamamoto. The rest of his followers were too incredibly strong. We managed to push them to their limits, but then something unthinkable happened. Ichigo raised a sweaty eyebrow in wonder. I was defeated by that blasted Bankai and was forced to Hueco Mundo, leaving my son practically alone. He was powerful, very powerful, but eventually, he was sealed in some dimension or space, where I couldn't touch him. The ancient stopped his story and hid his head to the shadows. Ichigo's mind was full of questions, but he settled for one. Let's say I get it, that I understood your story, but I ask again. What does it have to do with me? Because, I want you to join my son and overthrow the Soul King. Ichigo put a finger into his ear, trying to clear it. Come again? The ancient chuckled once again. I want you to join the crusade of my son. He will get out from his imprisonment. Help is already on its way. Just as planned. At his last words, Ichigo froze.
Well, what did you just say? Just as planned?
Ichigo gripped the hilt of his Zanpakuto. Where did you hear that phrase? The ancient stood up from his throne and emerged from the shadow.
Oh, that? Well, some Shinigami that spent some time in Hueco Mundo taught me, he said nonchalantly. Ichigo flared his Ryatsu as the black flames got hotter. How do you know Aizen? The hollow waved his hand provocatively. I think you know that. Isn't my appearance familiar to you, after all? Ichigo's sword suddenly glowed with Ryuryoku. Getsuga Tensho. Answer me.
The ancient let the attack hit him, emerging shortly from the swirled dust showing his torso, which was only slightly charred.
Not good enough. Well, do you see this small chip that's missing from my mask? He asked Ichigo, who was feeling dread. What about it?
He asked, pretending ignorance, making the hollow grin. Well, some time ago, it must have been around 20 years or so, I gave that fragment to Aizen, which he used to create one of his first attempts in making Arrancar, but you already suspected the truth the moment you saw me, didn't you? That the same Arrancar attacked your father and your mother and gave you the hollow you hide inside, am I right? Anger bubbled inside Ichigo, the angry shouts of Shirasaki only fueling it further. What did you just say? The ancient's grin only grew bigger when he felt the heat from Ichigo's dark flames. Good, but he needs another push. I'm saying that the hollow inside you comes from me. It means that you are my descendant. Well, it's quite redundant to say that, since, after all, you are your mother's son. Clang! The shockwave generated when Ichigo's Zanpakuto met the sword the ancient swiftly took from his sheath, pushed everything and everyone flying hard. How do you know my mother? Ichigo asked angrily as he slashed again, generating even bigger shockwave. You know, this and that, or don't tell me you thought your mother was a simple human? Or that Urahara Kisuke or even your father never hid anything from you? Getsuga Tensho. A massive crescent emerged from Ichigo's blade, sending the ancient flying a small distance, before he redirected the attack elsewhere. He looked down when he felt something warm fall on his knee. It was blood. Well, would you look at that, he can cut through my arrow. Explain. He heard Ichigo's yell coming from his left. The blood will always show itself, sooner or later you will find out about your roots. How about sooner? Zero. The ancient quickly ducked and flashed to Ichigo, sending him flying with an uppercut to the jaw. Don't yell, it makes you look weak. Your mother's death was, however, not my nor Aizen's fault. You should ask the Soul King. Ichigo, who was slowly getting up, widened his eyes. What are you saying? He asked in a quiet voice. I'm saying that it's the Soul King's fault that your mother is dead. I'm saying that your mother is the descendant of my son, and I'm saying. The ancient dodged a jab. That if you help my son, he can bring your mother back to life. Ichigo stopped in the middle of his shuunpa and visibly shook. Interested? The ancient taunted him. Don't. Ichigo whispered. The ancient came closer. What was that? I don't think I heard you quite right. Ichigo's hands gripped his sword, drawing blood as he shook further. Don't. Screw with me. Enjutsu no Ka. Without giving any chance to dodge, Ichigo sent a massive black wave of flames at him. The ancient only widened his eyes in surprise, shot one of his arms forward, and then he was engulfed in the sudden explosion. Still shaking in rage, Ichigo raised his head and coughed up blood. In the last moment before he was hit, the ancient sent a quick bala at Ichigo, ripping a chunk of his left side. Wobbling on his feet from the sudden blood loss, he quickly sent his hollow Ryuryoku to the wound, feeling immediately better, as the high-speed regeneration slowly healed him. Glancing at his right hand covered in blood, he remembered something from his past fights and grinned. Raising his hand, he poured his hollow energy into it. Gran Rei Siro. He muttered and widened his eyes when an incredible torrent of energy ripped through the air, creating shockwaves on its course and tearing the very fabric of Hueco Mundo's space. He fell on his knee from the sudden energy depletion and only raised his head when the force of the explosion almost threw him away.
That was dangerous.
Ichigo froze when the voice of the ancient came from his right.
How? He asked when he glanced at the hollow.
He was quite burned and spurting a deep wound on his torso that crossed the one he got from Yamamoto, creating an X-shaped scar. I managed to dodge the direct hit of your Zero and got caught up in the following explosion. Regarding your fist attack, my pain is a lot stronger than your darkness and only the heat of your flames can hurt me. Nevertheless, impressive display of damage and you're not even using your Bankai.
Impressive indeed. Suddenly the ancient's face showed irritation.
Well, I guess we'll have to cut this conversation short. It seems that your comrades are on their way, and even if I'm not that hooked on living, I can't die just yet, and this little fight of yours managed to tire me a little.
But remember, Kurosaki Ichigo. We will meet again.
And with that, he flashed away, leaving Ichigo full of questions and with no one that could answer them.
Fuck!
He yelled and slashed with his Zanpakuto in rage, swirling up the sand with the wind pressure. When he felt a familiar Ryatsu and loud voices, he turned around and seeing the faces speeding up to him, he gripped the hilt of Zangetsu tightly, slightly shaking with anger and prepared for action.
So you're telling me that you Kurosaki-san is fighting this ancient? Urahara Kisuke asked Harabel nervously.
Few hours ago, he was contacted by the captain of the second squad, Suefong, who was trying to get into contact with Ichigo on direct orders from the captain commander. When she heard that unfortunately, young substitute was in Hueco Mundo, she demanded to be let after him. Not wanting to let her go alone, Yoruchi joined her, and after a small considering, Urahara took off too. At Las Noches they encountered Nels Frachen, who quickly introduced themselves, and found out about the counterattack. From that point, the trio was following Ryatsu's signatures, and after some time, they came across Harabel, Grimjow and Nell, who were trying to get back to Ichigo after being blown away but were being constantly pushed with strong Ryatsu.
Yes, as I already explained, he was very interested in Kurosaki.
She trailed off, earning confused looks. I don't think that even Kurosaki has a chance against him right now, that he can't access his Bankai.
The Ryatsu that old Hollow posses is monstrous.
Yoruchi quickly grabbed her shoulders.
What are you talking about? He can't access Bankai?
Yes, he explained it to us, but it would take too much time now. Point is, Ichigo has limited power, so we should hurry. Nell stated with a hint of worry in her voice.
Suefong, who was quiet during the whole dialogue, raised one of her eyebrows.
Weird, I never heard about anyone who would suddenly lose an ability to release his Bankai after acquiring it. I remember that there was something different about Kurosaki-san's Ryatsu before he departed to Hueco Mundo. Maybe it's connected.
Urahara said as they were flashing through the Minos forest. Or in the worst-case scenario, Kurosaki-san may have discovered something unpleasant. He thought with a dread. Oh, there he is, but I don't see the ancient anywhere. Ichigo. Yoruchi yelled loudly, trying to catch Ichigo's attention as they got close. He's alive but not unharmed. She sighed in relief.
Their lifted mood, however, quickly plummeted when they noticed that Ichigo suddenly flashed towards them with his Zanpakuto raised in the air.
Urahara! You bastard!
Ichigo screamed and slashed at the ex-captain, who only widened his eyes and quickly put up his own Zanpakuto to block the incoming strike. Beads of sweat appeared on his brow as the strength behind the attack proved to be too much and he was blasted in the trees.
Ichigo!
Yoruchi yelled, trying to catch him, but as she got closer, the black flames surrounding Ichigo flared, preventing her from making any contact.
Don't touch the flames if you don't want to get burned.
Ichigo muttered darkly without breaking eye contact with the trajectory Urahara flew.
Ichigo? Yoruchi asked with wide eyes.
Something was wrong, she could feel it.
Suefong, being the non-sentimental one, reacted quickly and aimed a kick at Ichigo's temples, trying to subdue him.
Ichigo just raised his free arm and poured his Ryuryoku into it.
Bakuto number 8, Seiki.
He muttered, and Suefong found herself flying back, wide-eyed.
He learned Kido?
Not paying any attention to the captain of the second squad, Ichigo flashed to Urahara, swinging his Zanpakuto horizontally, as if trying to bifurcate him.
Urahara instinctively reacted and blocked the strike, using Ryuryoku to steady himself so that he wouldn't get blown away again. Damn, he's angry. Urahara gulped and tried to shake him off. He flashed away and with wide eyes dodged an incoming Byakurai. When? Putting his questions away, he quickly raised his Zanpakuto. Awaken, Beneheim. Releasing his Shurikai in a burst of Ryatsu, he grimaced as he felt a hollow energy coming at him fast, a signal that a Siro was fired. Chikasumi no Tate. He put up his blood mist shield just in time as Ichigo's Siro hit it, creating small cracks in it. Oh boy, looks like I'll have to take this seriously or I'm dead meat, and nobody wants that. Nake, Beneheim. Releasing Crimson Energy Blast at Ichigo, he was praying that it would calm Ichigo down. Ichigo was speeding up to him when he noticed an incoming attack. With a growl, he raised his own Zanpakuto. Yami no Tsukitate. Shield of Darkness easily stopped Urahara's Shurikai ability, earning a surprised look from the scientist. What is this ability? I've never seen Kurosaki-san use this before. He thought along with Yoruchi, who was still trying to understand the situation. Fine Kurosaki-san, seems I'll have to resort to Kido. Bokuto number 61, Rikujikoro. Urahara yelled a moment before Ichigo swung his blade at him again, stopping him in midair. Immediately, Ichigo growled and began Aro raise his Ryatsu, making Urahara raise his hands again. Bokuto number 63, Seijo Sabaku. A yellow energy in a form of a rope surrounded Ichigo's body, binding him tightly. Urahara sighed in relief a little and looked at trashing Ichigo. Now, Kurosaki-san, why don't you explain your actions? What did I do to you that deserved attacking me? He asked calmly while Yoruchi and Suifone flashed to him. With his hair hiding his eyes, Ichigo gritted his teeth. I left it alone when you put Hogyoku in Rukia and sent me and my friends to Soul Society without any kind of warning. I left it alone when you didn't tell me that Dad is a Shinigami. I left alone many things that you kept for yourself. He flared his Ryatsu as much as he could, black flames slowly encompassing Urahara's Kido, corroding it. Urahara widened his eyes and prepared to do another binding spell when Ichigo continued, interrupting him. But then I find out that you, along with my dad, were keeping the real reason to my mom's death to yourself, her identity and who I am and how it's all connected? Enough! The Kido suddenly broke, blasting the trio away. Kisuke, what is he talking about? Yoruchi asked tentatively. Urahara looked down sadly. We had no other choice. He didn't have the time to finish as Ichigo came at him once again. Deciding that he needed Ichigo to calm down, he went on the offensive, trying to drive Ichigo into corner. However, this was different from the time he first trained Ichigo, and the substitute was more than capable of fending off his slashes and jabs. Finally snapping out of her surprise, Yoruchi flashed to Ichigo but widened her eyes as he aimed a single finger at her. Heido number 1, show. Awaiting a small shove, Yoruchi gulped as her breath was blown away from the force of the Kido. Suifone gritted her teeth as her mentor got blasted and she flashed to Ichigo from behind, kicking him into his back, sending him flying into trees. What's wrong with him? She yelled at Urahara, who just shook his head. Ichigo slowly got up and poured his Ryuryoku into his blade. But above all, Urahara-san, why didn't you tell me that the Soul King had his fingers in my mother's death? He yelled angrily at the shopkeeper, who, along with the others, widened his eyes. So you heard about that? Urahara muttered sadly, angering Ichigo more. So you heard about that? What the fuck is with that reaction? Getsuga Tensho. Suifone gulped as she saw a huge crescent-shaped energy flying at them in high speed. She saw firsthand during Ichigo's fight with Aizen just what potential damage that attack held. Shit! Urahara cursed and quickly built up his Ryatsu. Bokuto number 81 Denku. Chikasumi no Tate. He yelled in quick succession, raising a Kido barrier along with his own Zanpakuto shield in front of them, constantly pouring his Ryuroku in it, praying that it would hold off Ichigo's attack. Meanwhile, Ichigo fell on his knees, exhausted from his previous battles and from almost all of his Ryuroku used to power up his abilities. He punched the ground in anguish just as an explosion blew sand at him.
From it, slightly injured Urahara emerged, along with Yoruchi and Suifeng, whose clothes were a bit tattered, but they were mostly unharmed.
Why? Urahara-san, why didn't you tell me? Ichigo asked with clenched fists.
Said man dusted himself and looked at his destroyed hat, throwing it away with a sigh. He sat in front of Ichigo, looking for the right words. After a minute, he opened his mouth.
I was scared.
He answered honestly, earning a surprised expression from Yoruchi and Suifeng but no reaction from Ichigo. I was afraid that if you knew that the one that oversees the afterlife in Shinigami was somehow responsible for the death of your mother, that you'd turn your back on us. That you'd let Aizen to go after the Soul King. That your anger would cloud your mind and you'd even sacrifice your friends. I know that nothing I'll say will make a difference, but I'm honestly sorry. Urahara finished and bowed to Ichigo. Did Dad knew all this? Ichigo asked in a dull voice. Urahara hesitated for a second but nodded in the end. Yes. He had his own reason for not wanting to tell you, but they were as sound as mine. Ichigo gritted his teeth for a moment, but then he unclenched his fists. Did anyone else knew? Urahara shook his head. No, I don't think anyone you know knew about it. Yoruchi watched them with heavy heart. On one hand, she wanted to kick the ass of her childhood friend so hard, he wouldn't be able to sit down for at least a week, but on the other one, she wanted just to hug Ichigo, to let him know that she would stand by him no matter what. She was slowly realizing what these thoughts meant, but she also knew that this wasn't the right time for it. Finally, after a few long minutes, Ichigo sighed and the flames around him slowly disappeared, allowing Yoruchi to grab his shoulders lightly. He absent-mindedly reached for her hands and squeezed them, but after that he shakily stood up. I'm not forgiving you for now, Urahara-san. I don't think that you are someone who would willingly hurt others, but you are also a shady person, who operates behind the scenes, and right now, you lost some of my trust. He stated, not looking at the shopkeeper. Urahara also stood up, sadly nodding. I know, Kurosaki-san. Ichigo turned to Suifeng, who was slightly uncomfortable with the scene. I assume something bad happened in Soul Society. He said. Yes. Aizen Sasuke vanished from his prison. She hesitantly admitted and watched as Ichigo's eyes widened for a second. I see, bastard. Are you here just to inform me, or are you here to take me to Soul Society? Suifeng recoiled a little. She was expecting more violent reaction from Ichigo after hearing that they let Aizen escape. Well, Captain Commander would like you to come back to Soul Society, as we don't know what will the traitor do next. A note was sent to Royal Guard and we are awaiting them in few days' time. At the mention of the Royal Guard, Ichigo clenched his fists again, but stayed calm. I'll get there later. He turned to Urahara. Now, I need to get back to Las Noches for a moment, and after that, we, meaning me and Urahara-san, are going after to talk to my dad. I want to know everything. As you wish, Kurosaki-san. Oh, by the way, your friends who were here with you are already on their way back. Urahara nodded and watched as Ichigo turned away and flashed into the direction of Las Noches. He quickly interrupted Yoruchi with his hand when he saw her opening her mouth. I know, Yoruchi, you're angry and you have every right to be, but later. I was hoping we could talk to Kurosaki-san about his new abilities. They seem dangerous. Suifeng just looked at them with mouth opened wide. Was I just disregarded as a bother? Outside of Las Noches, 2 hours later. Lillinet watched as Ichigo finally arrived, his clothes torn and little bloody. Harabel, Nell and Grinjao came few minutes ago and already explained what happened at enemy base, leaving Lillinet anxious. As Ichigo stopped in front of her, with 2 other people behind him, she smiled a bit. He's fine, it's nothing serious, I'm glad. She slowly walked to him and briefly hugged him, earning a raised eyebrow from Yoruchi. I'm glad that you're okay, Ichigo. She whispered into his ear, making him smile a little. Yeah, thanks Lily. She smiled too. Before the 4 of them went for counterattack, Ichigo decided that Lillinet was a too long name, so he shortened it to Lily, against which she didn't protest. In fact, she liked it as it made her feel a little closer to him. Lily, Yoruchi thought with grimace.
I take it that Harabel-san already told you what happened? Ichigo asked the smaller Arankar. Yeah, but I'd rather hear it from you. Her smile weakened when Ichigo shook his head. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but I can't stay here. There's been some problems in Seoul society and, with my dad, and I have to take care of that. He patted her on her helmet. Don't worry though, I'll visit you as soon as I can, okay? He chuckled when Lilynette pouted, and with a small grin he leaned to her. Tell everyone that I'm sorry about my abrupt departure and take this, it's a communicator. You can always call me if you want to, okay? He handed her a small device he received from Urahara. She nodded and quickly planted a small kiss on his cheek, surprising him. See you later, Ichigo. She grinned and sprinted inside. Okay, I don't like her already. Yaruchi thought possessively as her mouth twitched in irritation. Ichigo turned to Urahara and others. We can go now. Captain Suifoam, stay with Yaruchi-san at Urahara's shop until I'll send a message, or you can go back to Seoul Society, it's your call. Suifoam raised one eyebrow at the sudden formality in his voice, but nodded. Ichigo turned and opened a garganta for them. Let's go. Kurosaki's household. Ishin was relaxing on his favorite chair as his shift in a clinic ended just a few minutes ago. It was hard to do it, because he has been feeling a dread in his spine for the past few hours. Yuzu and Karen were fortunately on a sleepover at their friend's house, so he didn't have to worry about them. The only one whose location was unknown was Ichigo. His only son. His fears were true, when after a few more minutes, he heard the entrance doors being opened and he felt the ryatsu of his longtime friend, Urahara Kisuke. Yo, Kisuke, what dash? He stopped in the middle of his sentence, when he noticed that Ichigo was standing next to Urahara with slightly angry expression on his face. Kisuke? He knows, Ishin. He met the ancient. Ishin's eyes widened and he suddenly understood the dread he was feeling was because of this. Fuck, okay, let me just grab my things. What? Ichigo's angry expression was replaced with confusion. Ishin turned to him with neutral expression. Well, you can't have the full story without him. Without who? Ishin sighed and looked at Ichigo with serious eyes. Ryukin Ishida. That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.